I'd like to have the audience there answer some questions.
Yes,
We got
of
about
course.
10 minutes or
Or
so.
ask questions.
Ask questions.
Yes, and, but first, I have a question. The California GOP,
Oh, yes.
at the level you're at, what is your assessment right now, and what do you recommend for the future?
Yeah. It's a very broad question. I am on the board of directors of the California Republican Party. I didn't talk a whole lot about that. The big focus for us right now is Proposition 50. So immediately after the election, we authorized expenditure on a lawsuit that you probably have heard about, but we filed a lawsuit immediately. And the focus of the lawsuit is compelling, I have to tell you. It's a violation of the Voting Rights Act, because in this country, you cannot use race in the redesignation of district boundaries unless you're doing that to remediate a racial disparity that pre-existed in violation of the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act. That was not the case in California. The 2020 census and the redistricting that the commission approved was legitimate. There was no Voting Rights Act issue with the 2020 drawing of the boundaries. But the Democratic Party and the governor touted, and this is all on record at committee hearings, they touted this to the press, that they were redesigning some of the boundaries to favor certain racial groups. In some parts of Los Angeles, they wanted to create another Hispanic district. I mean, that may sound appealing to some demographics, but it's also unlawful. You can't use race as a basis for drawing districts unless you're remediating a racial disparity that pre-existed. And so that's the legal argument that's before the court. You probably have heard as well that the federal government is now attached to the lawsuit as of a few days ago. That's going to add a lot more weight. The Department of Justice is going to be filing responses and complaints as well. And so we're hoping that the federal judiciary, the courts, will address this before Christmas. And we'll get it all resolved, because there is a point of no return after which the Secretary of State cannot modify the election process without it being costly or unwieldy. So right now the CAGOP is focused almost entirely on fighting Prop 50 through resources in litigation. Going into 2026, I do realize that the chairwoman has appointed a special strategic committee that's going to be focused on the legislative seats, finding candidates, coming up with a strategy. I was not appointed to that committee. Some of you may realize that I'm not, I come from the reform wing of the California Republican Party, and so that particular wing is not well represented on the board of directors. We've got only a few members that come from that persuasion, but there are efforts underway to prepare for 2026. So those are some quick observations.
Okay, thank you very much, Jack. I have much more questions, but I'm going to leave it open. Yes.
Using the theory that the Democrats used 4 years ago, 5 years ago with COVID, where everybody's saying it's safe and effective, could we look to using your 4 issues, that every Republican candidate that we want to come in and flip, you know, the assembly seats or whatever, if we have some unity? You know, years ago CNN said the reason Democrats accomplish more, even if it's evil, is because they're more united.
Yeah, that's a great point. You might recall in 1994, Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House. He had just been elected in a wave of Republican takeover of the House. Do you recall that?
Yes,
1994?
yes.
And do you recall?
Contract with America.
That's right. There was a strategy employed, and it was called Contract with America. I've been in contact with a few CRA-related members from other parts of the state who are interested in something very similar. That going into 2026, we should organize the legislator or the legislative candidates and other, candidates at different levels of government to organize around something similar to that. That would, in my estimation, include at least some of the issues that I identified. Maybe a few more issues, but the reason why I focus so much on these issues is because it worked for me. It was so easy for me to get Democrats over to our side. They are winning issues. They're not the most important necessarily or the only issues in some particular geographies. We need to push other issues that that are important for those geographies. And of course, more broadly, to save this country, we've got, a lot of issues that affect the culture that we need to address. But I point to those 4 because they're low-hanging fruit. They are so easy for us to bring people over to our side. And so if we organized a strategy of unity between the candidates over issues that are non-controversial and winning, then we might be able to make some inroads. Thank you for the suggestion.
Contract with California.
Yes, contract with yeah. that's
Bob,
right.
you had a question, or Nancy?
No, Nancy.
Nancy.
Nancy, yes.
Yes, I'm a former educator, and I loved how you advocated and fought for the Latino people. I worked in districts where the Latino people were the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
And is there a committee you can form or a strategy you can, bring forth that will uplift the Latino people and give them an equal fighting chance towards a good education?
Good question.
I really am a believer in school choice
Yes.
and school vouchers. And every once in a while, we get a measure that starts to get off the ground, and then we just don't have the right funding or other priorities get in the way. And it's so regrettable. I know the Tea Party caucus at one point in Pasadena had organized an effort, and it was starting to gain some traction, but it's very costly to get things on the propositions. But I am hopeful that we'll make another round at this. And with so much that's afflicting education today, I mean, so many more issues than I was facing 10 years ago. I mean, like night and day issues. And so I really think if we go again with a proposition, we can be successful. And it's got to be rooted in choice for our children and our parents, as well as school vouchers, because I think your education should not be defined by the zip code that you are connected to. That's just wrong. And it is a civil rights issue, by the way, and we can win over Hispanics overnight on this issue.
Very good. There is a proposition initiative out for school choice. It's called the CEO Act. We've been signing people up for it already. Sandy and I have over at the farmers market. Any case, I want to continue on with questions. Thank you, Jack. John, you have your hand up back there?
Yeah, of course I do. Thank you, Jack. I don't think people realize that where Jack is. And Jack's such a gentleman, he hasn't said a lot of these things, but our California Republican Party has treated him like trash. They haven't cooperated with him, they've harassed him, and they are losing because of things like that. But that's not the question. The question is that there was an audit that was supposed to happen with the California Republican Party, and they did an internal audit, and I was wondering if you could talk about that.
The bylaws of the California Republican Party require an annual financial statement audit. That's very simple. All government agencies have to do that on an annual basis. I have been a part of that historically in my professional work with companies. I mean, it's basically a non-negotiable, easy proposition. And it's in the bylaws, so it's a legal requirement that we have for ourselves. It is true that we have not had an audit for the California Republican Party's finances. I have brought this up to the board of directors. I bring it up regularly, even outside of the board, and it is something that, at least unofficially, I've gotten corroboration on that we're going to be pursuing this. But as of right now, we have not engaged in audit.
Wow. That's
Thank you.
incredible.
How many years has it been?
About 10 years.
It'd be nice to know
We
what's
haven't
in
had
the
an
war
audit in
chest
10
for
years?
Republicans to battle against Democrats.
I mean, we do reporting. There is some reporting that happens, and that's with the Federal Elections Commission and the Fair Political Practices Commission, or through the Secretary of State, for state finances versus federal finances. So the California GOP has money divided into those two categories, federal and state, and they each need to be presented to the appropriate regulatory agencies. But those are period reports. In other words, we're presenting what transpired, revenue and expenditures within a defined period. I have oversight over that, and I have to look at the receipts, I look at the detailed documentation to sign off that what transpired in that window was legitimate. But an audit would do more than that. An audit would look at not just what transpires in a given period of time, but what exists today. In other words, like the balance sheet, what is in the books today, what was in the books at the beginning of the period. And so we need that component of the financial statements properly evaluated as well. If you look at any company that issues financial statements, there's an income statement that is focused on what transpires in a defined period of time. And then there's also a balance sheet that basically tells you, snapshot, what are the resources we have today? It's kind of like fund balance, in the case of cities. And so it's important that we get that examined. So I'm a big proponent of it.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of distraction, which that's what they do to us, distraction. But anyway, this is actually a question for the mayor. I'm just wondering whether, I'm hearing that during at the precincts, they have two lines, the Democrats and Republicans. What the hell is that all about? Is to divide it, do they know what box to throw away or something like that, and that's another thing that actually worries me, because I haven't, I don't use those machines, but I don't know where to put my vote, because they want me to put it in a box, they found them in the ravines and such, the black boxes. So then now I'm thinking, well, gosh, where do I put it? In the official ballot boxes? But guess what? I'm finding them in the parks. I'm finding them on the street, and so forth, where they can't be seen, So then I thought, well, shoot, where do I put it? So then I put it at the sheriff's department in Redondo. So I'm thinking, well, maybe because they have a lot of cameras and so forth. But I mean, where is it safe? What do we do?
No, you just vote on election day using the machine.
The machines, but what type of machines are there? The ones that cheat?
I know,
No, I am
still,
not gonna
we
do it.
overwhelmed the vote. When we vote, we swamped the vote, and that's how President Trump got elected, and we got all the states.
Yeah, I will say
Is that a
that
question?
We swamped.
I think broadly speaking, election integrity is the kind of the underlying theme of your question. That is a very important consideration for us. We need clean elections in this country, in this state, and I can testify that even in my old city, there were shenanigans going on with elections. I had a neighbor whose daughter was traveling in Europe, and when she went to vote, she saw that somebody had signed her daughter's name. So either the daughter, transported herself through telepathy over to Cudahy from Europe in an instant and then transported herself back to Europe, or there's a shenanigan going on with the election process. And so it exists. Fraud exists.
So we need to get back to the Chads.
We need to get back to,
Those cards.
we definitely need elements of what we had in the past
Yes.
to corroborate the vote. There are efforts underway across the country. I think we are lucky to have the current Justice Department involved. You might recall Harvey Dillon, who is the chief of the Civil Rights Commission, has filed a lawsuit against Orange County. We have a citizens group in Riverside County that is already meeting with every single member of the board of directors. They are paying attention. They are committing themselves to audits and reform. We also have the ear of various district attorneys that will prosecute. And so there is momentum now in
Because even
favor of
the
that.
hanging chad, when they were complaining about the hanging chad, that shouldn't count. Of course it should count, because it's so what? It's still been voted.
Okay.
More to come on this issue for sure, but great
Yeah,
point.
with voter ID, we will be satisfying a lot of the issues.
That too.
And
Voter
that's the-
ID,
That's our
key.
biggest hope, and it looks pretty good with 70%. Yes, sir.
Yeah, speaking about elections, I noticed in a lot of precincts where I vote, they're all county employees. Whatever happened to the volunteers? Where you have half Republicans, half Democrats?
Look.
These county employees, and I don't know if there's any county employees here today, they're like 90% Democrat. How do we know that our votes are counting?
Yeah.
And
We-
they're hiring illegals
And that's
to count.
That's a big
I
problem.
know that.
And it comes down to, they're the super majority in California.
But you know what we need to do
He's
is
got more ideas.
sign up to be a volunteer
I've
at
signed
the
up several
precinct.
times, they've never called me.
That's too bad. We need
Never called me.
to, we need to keep going though. We need to investigate why that's the case, but we need to keep flooding the application so that we get our people selected. I remember voting on one occasion back in my old town, and I had a question about the ballot. And I remember asking the worker, and the worker came up and she said, oh, so for example, you want to vote for the Democrat, and pointed at the Democratic line item as part of her explanation to satisfy my question. Totally irrelevant. Why is she pointing to the Democratic candidate? And this was a worker, a volunteer perhaps at that facility, and we cannot tolerate that. I filed a complaint. But what we need to do is we need to flood the application so that our people can get into those election sites and we can be a check and balance on what's going on.
I mean,
Honestly,
40% of the people in California are Republicans. There should be 40%
That's right.
volunteers
Yeah.
in these precincts.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, the last meeting I was at a Republican, and they had 2 meetings before then, no questions were allowed. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad you guys have the questions for them. Unfortunately, we can't answer all of them, but I want to let you know that that's why we're here. We're here to answer questions. And I'd like to say thank you very much, Jack. I've got something for you. John, I've got something for you too. Come on up. This is a display of the Pledge of Allegiance right here. And it has Jack's name on it as a special featured a speaker for us. I'd like to have this. And John, for speaking to us here, I'm going to give you an eagle to display either in front of the window.
Egret.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
thank you guys.
And thank you again.
My
I've
pleasure.
got a little stipend for you.
Thank you guys.
There we go.
You guys are the best. Thank you guys.